Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining me today. I really do appreciate the time and the opportunity that Eric has afforded me here, and I think it's just it's a great program that he's got together, and I'm really excited about things to come in the future. So let me get started. For those of you that don't know who I am, my name is Jonathan Tysinger. I work out of the health department here in Davidson County as the substance abuse coordinator. It's a great opportunity that I've been afforded, and really appreciative of the work that I've been offered to do, and I've got a great support team that work around me. Before I get started though, I do want to give a big shout out and a thank you to the people who are out there working in the stores every day and just simply going to work. And I know that's a big risk, but there's many of us that do appreciate it and count on you guys to do what you're doing. And I want to say a special thanks to our emergency services and our medical staff. You guys really are leading the way right now, and thank you so much, and we appreciate it. Everybody else, practice those safe distancing protocols and do as your local health departments and CDC is recommending. That's the only way we're going to get past this. So thank you for that. So moving on, today I'm going to talk about dismantling stigma, and it's probably one of the largest hurdles that an individual has in getting past their substance use disorder and trying to get past their old lifestyle and overcome these things. And it's the largest thing that they'll ever have to overcome in their life, because even as they get past it and they move past it, there's still that history and that remembrance. And it's up to the rest of us who work in support services, who work as friends, who are there as family, to do everything we can to make sure that label and that stigma that's been stuck to this individual is dismantled. And it starts with conversations. So that's what I want to bring to you today. I want to bring that, but I want to bring it in a different perspective. I'm going to bring it from the perspective of where I was at. Some quick background so you'll know who I am. Before I took this position in August of last year, I was a police officer for 10 years here in Davidson County in Lexington. And like many, when I would run across an individual who was suffering from some type of substance use, and the term addiction was a common term. The common adage and approach that was taught and used, and I even grew up with in the Reagan years, was say no to drugs. It's all about decision. But over that 10-year span, working with these individuals and running into the same people over and over again, instead of just forcing my opinion of what I thought they should do, I started listening to what they were telling me every time I would run into them. And I started spending a little bit more time with individuals who were suffering from some type of drug use. And the things I began to learn was that it's not a simple switch. It's not like one day they woke up and said, hey, this is what I want to do, and just flip the switch and then there it was. It's a whole lot more complicated than that. Just like everyone else's life is more complicated. I didn't end up where I'm at today because I made this conscious decision when I was 18 years old to be sitting here today talking to you about this. And it's through a series of decisions and a series of life circumstances, good, bad, all the things that make us up who we are as a person, not just one thing. However, unfortunately, in today's society, we've attached labels to everybody, and then we view them through that one label, regardless of anything else that has to do with them. So I'll give you an example. If you were to say, start talking to me about someone, and you said, so-and-so is a race car driver. Well, instantly in my mind, I had pictures of race cars, the tracks, people driving around, the winner's circle, sponsorships, and so on and so forth. But that is an example of how we stigmatize an individual, because that person, that driver, that race car driver, there's a whole lot more to him than just the fact that he drives a car. He possibly has a family, married with kids, he has brothers, sisters. Maybe he has other hobbies. Maybe he has another job. Maybe he also works Monday through Friday, and the weekends is his race time. So there's a whole lot more that makes up an individual besides one thing that they do or one decision that they made. And stigma does that. Stigma attaches that nasty connotation of an addict laying on this, the street corner somewhere, smelly, dirty, with ragged out clothes and no money and homeless. And that's the indoctrination that we've kind of grown to come used to here in America. And it's stuck. You see it in our movies, you see it on TV, you see it on billboards, you see it in commercials. And that's not always the case. And unfortunately, that's very little of the case. The truth of it is, America is the largest consumer of illicit drugs in the world. We consume more pills than any other country combined. You combine all the other countries in the world, and America still consumes more of them. So we are a drug-ridden society. Not all drugs are bad, but the way that we use them and abuse them is the problem that we've run into today. So moving forward a little bit, that's why Eric has asked me to talk today and about specifically, he asked me, what do you want to talk about? And stigma is the first thing that comes to my mind, because I understand that in order for any type of change to take place, we're going to have to start changing people's hearts and minds. And the only way that's going to happen is if we really sit down and take time to talk to people and to learn about them and to learn about their backgrounds and the influences in their life and the circumstances that led them to where they're at. Then maybe we can begin to develop a plan to help that individual. But it takes opening up our ears and closing our mouths and stop forcing down their throats what we think they need. And what they need is support, and they need for people like you and I to begin to break down these labels and these stigmas, so that we get them out of the box and stop judging them before we even had a chance to actually get to work with them and know who they are and help them. So that's why the stigma is so detrimental, because it's the perceptions, the social norms, and it closes minds. Now, these are things that's been taught here in America for years. Historically, if you go back and look at the timeline of drug use here in America, it goes back to when our forefathers were settling the country. I mean, it starts out with simple things. Tobacco, I mean, it is a substance and people do use it. Not going to debate whether it's morally right or wrong, but it is a substance and people do use it, and sometimes people do abuse it. But that is a substance that people use. It is a drug. Moving on to alcohol, and then of course, opium and heroin has got a long-term history here in America. Cocaine obviously does. And you look at this, and these substances have been in America's history and in our lifestyles and our society for years, decades, centuries now. And because of that, the drug use is so indoctrinated in our society that on certain levels it is accepted and is considered a normal behavior. So we really start splitting hairs when we say it's okay to use this drug, but it's not okay to use that drug. And when you start talking about morality, you end up confusing the situation when you tell a person it's okay to do this, and because this is what this consists of. But this over here, even though it's essentially the same thing, it's not okay to do that. So if you do that, we're gonna label you something else, and you're not part of our normal society, and therefore you're not going to be accepted the way the rest of us have been, and the privileges are not going to be extended to you like the rest of us have been. And so that's how detrimental stigma can be, because it can place a person in a particular role in life, and then no one will actually give them a chance. And we need to start working toward breaking that down. Look at my notes here. I'm not that smart. I actually have to write notes down. Let me give you an example of why we need to break down the idea of stigma and terminology. We treat diseases like that's a person's, they're not their choice. Let me use diabetes, for example. If a person has diabetes, we will, sympathize or empathize with them. We might have pity. We might say, poor you, what can we do to help you? And it's a disease. It's been diagnosed as a disease. It's classified as a disease. It's treatable. It's reoccurring. It has, it ebbs and flows. You go through periods where you've got it under control, and you don't, and you have to go back through. There's medications for it. There's treatment for it. There's therapy for it. And all of these things that I just described exactly describes a person that is also suffering from substance use disorder, but yet we somehow attach that stigma and say, oh, it's your choice. Now, I may have said earlier that to a certain degree, that person does have to take some responsibility, as does the person in some cases, depending on the type of diabetes they have. But it's not, that's not the point. The point of it is that there's enough research and enough evaluation done with people who are suffering from substance use disorder now that we know it is actually a disease. It is classified as a disease. And it is classified as a disease. It is treatable with drugs. It is treatable with therapy. And a person also goes through periods of relapse and recovery, just as a person that might be suffering from diabetes does. They have it under control and then they don't. Then they go back, they get treatment, they get under control, and they don't. And oftentimes we think that a person who's suffering from substance use disorder should be, once they get sober and it's out of their system, they should be able to move on. But just like the person who suffers from diabetes, like I just mentioned, a person suffering from substance use disorder also has tendencies to relapse and go back through recovery. And that's part of the process. But yet we somehow attach that stigma to them and say, oh, they're just a dirty drug user. They're never going to get any better. But we don't say that about a person who has diabetes. We don't say that about a person who has any other type of disease. But yet substance use is diagnosed as a disease, and it is treatable. And we need to start working toward educating the public about that and change this whole thing about it was just simply a choice. At some point, it may have been a choice, but for not everybody, it is a choice. There's thousands and thousands of instances where individuals were prescribed some type of prescription medication, typically an opiate or opioid, and they became addicted to it. That is changing. But we need to start changing. We need to start talking. And how are we going to do all this? Well, simply we need to start having conversations. That's the first thing we need to do. We need to sit down and start having conversations across the board. You and I, myself, and someone who's suffering, and we need to listen so we can start figuring things out. We need to bring social awareness to these real truths and start tearing down these ideas that somehow this person is completely their fault, 100% their fault. They didn't know anything about what they were doing. They made a bunch of bad decisions, and they had their chance. They had their options. They chose not to. And once you're suffering from some type of drug use, it's not just a matter of you decide just to stop and you're done. It takes a big support system to get past that. We need to change our terminology. Addict is something that you're going to start seeing less and less of because it connotates a label, and we view that person through addict. We don't view that person through a person suffering from substance use disorder. We say addict. We're looking at one attribute in that person's life, and yet we have labeled them and put them in a box and done away with them and say we're done. And we've got to stop doing that. We've got to change terminology to change the mindsets. We need to reach out. We need to reach out and support. We need to give time to those who are suffering with substance use disorder. And we need to continue to work on dismantling stigma. It's a heavy construct in society. It is. It took us years to get to where we're at, to why we believe what we believe, and it potentially could take us years to get out of this mindset too. We didn't just wake up in America one day and say, all people that are suffering from substance use disorder or addiction are bad. We did this over decades and decades through governmental labeling of certain types of drugs being bad. Now, don't hear what I'm not saying. Drugs are bad, but we also have a social influence of people that are telling us what are good and what is bad. And through that, that's what's become the accepted norms. And we've missed the mark. We've got it wrong. And we need to start changing how people mindset and what they think about that. So we didn't get here overnight. Well, we're not going to get it fixed overnight. It's going to take a long time, and it's going to take a lot of us sitting down to talk about it and start understanding the situation. Stigma is a horrible thing. No matter what you're going through in life, no matter who you are, the chances and the opportunities that are going to be afforded to you often come down to your label that society has put upon you, or the name or the tag that they have attached to you as well. And that is unfortunate. It's the truth. But stigma is the same way. We need to change this idea in society that just because a person is suffering from drug use means that they're not worth going after, they're not worth trying to save, and that they somehow are less valuable to the rest of us. And that's not the case. We need to actually start doing more about it when it comes to having conversations, and we need to start listening. So I'm going to wrap up there. I do appreciate your time. And everybody out there, please stay safe. Continue the safe distancing protocols and do all you can to prolong this, and we'll get through it together. So stay safe, stay strong, and let's start having those conversations. Thank you.